Welcome to this week's edition of the Old Paratrooper podcast. But before we get started, I want to tell you about our new sponsors, Veterans for Veterans. If you served after 1987 and your hearing's taken a knock from your time in the forces, these are the people to speak to. They've helped thousands of veterans like us claim compensation for tinnitus and hearing loss. They're ex-military themselves, so they genuinely get it.
It's free to check if you qualify, and the claims are no win, no fee. To get started, click the link in this video or visit veteransforveterans.co.uk. Right, welcome to this week's edition of the Old Paratrooper podcast. And today I'm joined with current pro boxer, Maxi Hughes. How you doing, pal? All right?
Well, good, mate. Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No dramas. My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on. I know we chatted and we talked about trying to get together a bit before Christmas, but you were on the build up to quite a big fight, which we'll come on to a bit further down. But obviously, it's a pleasure to have you on, pal. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Yeah, like when we chatted, I were in that build up, but I can sit here smiling because we got a job done right before Christmas. So it is nice to fight just before Christmas because then I know I'm not going to get a call up for an early fight next year. So I can enjoy Christmas. I can enjoy Christmas dinner and the bits of pudding afterwards. So it were a nice way to finish off the year.
No, fair play to you, mate. Fair play to you. Like I say, it must take a bit of a rack off over Christmas because you want to enjoy the finer things. And obviously, fighting at the weight you do, I don't know, but obviously we'll probably talk about that later on. But you've got to stay kind of round about your fight. You don't strike me as a fighter that kind of blows up massively in between fights. You kind of stay in shape within reason, don't you, in between? So, be nice to take a rack off and have a few beers and have a bit of nice food over Christmas. But we'll get to that. But what I like to do with all the podcasts is I like to just start at the beginning. It seems like the best place to start. Have a bit of chat about the guests, where they're from, where they grew up, kind of what they were like going through school, whether they were kind of naughty, were they good, and ultimately what led you down the kind of path that you went down. So over to you, pal. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I've born in Doncaster Royal Infirmary, and I've always been from Rosington. It's a ex-mining village now. As many villages are around South Yorkshire, and I think Yorkshire in general. But yeah, that's where I was born and grew up, and that's who I am now. I'm just like a lot of ex-mining villages now. They're full of working class people, and that's what I am, and that's my values, and that's how I live my life as a working class person. And I had a very, very good childhood. My mum and dad weren't together. I can't really remember my dad when I was a young boy, but I remember the first proper meeting that I remember when I was 11. Back to the beginning, at first I grew up in an house full of women. So my mum had not quite got her own house when I was first born. We was in with my nana and granddad. But it was just full of love, and we were just a typical working class family household. My nana and granddad had 5 sisters, so there were mum and 4 sisters. So surrounded by women, surrounded by love, and I was the first grandson in the family. My granddad, he always wanted boys, but he ended up with 5 girls. So I was the first boy. So as we all grandkids, but because I was first boy, I felt like I had a lot of fuss and a lot of love, and I had all my memories of childhood were happy. I want so much a naughty kid. Like as I started school, I was always the real quiet kid, And I remember, well, my mum reminds me of this, because now when I get into it, I can talk and I can waffle on. But when I first started school, it might have been year 1. The teacher pulled my mum to a side and said, "There's something wrong with your boy. He don't talk. He won't speak with anyone. He won't play with anyone." And she then, typical mum, being defensive, she went, "Well, if he's got something to say, he'll say it." So that was me. I am still a very naturally shy kid, and that was me, especially at a young age. Just very, very shy, very quiet. I had a good little group of friends. A lad now, Aaron Kibble, who I met him at nursery, started playing at nursery, and and he's still my best friend today. So we've gone sort of through nursery. He was a little bit naughtier than me, so we were always one getting told off, and I was just part of it because I were next to him. They sort of looked at me and went, "We know you're not naughty. You're just hanging around with naughty kids."
Wrong crowd again. That old wrong
Yeah,
crowd thing, was
yeah.
it?
But they were like, I was just like, well, they're my mates. So I'll keep hanging around with them. That's me. They're my mates. But yeah, I want a mate. Like as I started going through school again, I had the same mentality. I was really quiet. I used to chat and be noisy and daft with my mates because I felt comfortable. I were in my comfort zone. But yeah, that it were again. I had a really good childhood, and when I think about times that when it was time to play out, we were just typical lads. Not really naughty, a bit mischievous. No, that we didn't cause anybody any real harm. Most of the time because we were really into BMXs. That's what we had. So it were
Good man.
going in woods or going in the field, building jumps, and spending us hours doing that. Occasionally, a game we played called crab appling, which I think if there were a group of lads who did it to my house, it'd be annoying. But I think because I did it, I'd maybe see it funny side. But we used to, if there were wild apple trees, we'd get a couple of small apples, and just as we're going round on bikes, we'd just throw them at people's windows just to get that reaction and get a chase because we wanted that adrenaline. And there were some angry blokes out there who God knows what they'd do if they caught us, but they used to get in car and they'd chase us. But because we were pretty good at bike, we knew shortcuts, we knew where snickets were, we'd be just bolting about. So that was as really naughty as it could. And I think now, I think if I saw a group of lads lobbing apples at me window, you'd be mad. But I think that were me. That were me. So
Make you smile. Well, it probably
yeah,
make you smile. That whole
yeah,
scrumping, hedge hopping, knock a
yeah.
door run.
That's
That
it.
sort
Yeah,
of stuff. And
yeah,
that like you're right in what you say. It's not naughty, is it? It's just kind of lads being lads, and I think that stuff's kind of again. You kind of if I had some kids come over my fence in my garden, I'd obviously be annoyed, like you say, but I'd be a bit like, yeah, that's just lads being lads, isn't it?
yeah. And there's a part here that goes, well, it's karma. I did it to somebody's garden.
Yeah,
There was somebody
I
in my
deserve it
position
back.
watching them. I go, yeah, it's passing a torch, isn't it? And what I always
Yeah,
think, I'd like
yeah,
to
no,
think I can still do it. With keeping fit and being, training a lot. I think I could still do it if I really wanted.
I think
It's if I
I
see
think
a
there's
group
more.
of lads do
I think there's more chance
it.
of me if I did some hedge hopping now. I'd probably end up running through a fence rather than over it. I'm not going to
You
lie.
don't need to
That'd
jump.
prob-
You can just run straight through it.
Yeah, I think that'd be like a scene from Hot Fuzz, where we kind of hops over and then the guy behind him just plows through the
Yeah,
fence. That would probably be me. So,
yeah,
no, it is, and I was into BMX and I was into skateboarding and I was into that sort of stuff. Good fun. And
yeah,
I tell a story about I was really good on a skateboard as like a 14, 15 year old. Used to go down to the Market Square in Nottingham with all the other skateboarders. And I remember not too many years ago, probably about 10 years ago, there was a lad outside the shop with a skateboard, and I thought, I'll show these young'uns how to do a few trips. And I put one foot on a skateboard and it went from under me and ended up landing on my back. So lesson learned, you remember
yeah,
it in a different light than what you can kind of do now. So
yeah.
no, awesome stuff. So obviously boxing's a huge passion of yours. It's a career that you've followed. Was that something because again, different sort of levels. I make no secret in the box, and I'm not trying to honestly compare my kind of little taster of boxing to yours in any shape or form. But I got into boxing. I did box as a kid a little bit, but then I got into it later in life. Did you get into it from kind of early on?
Not as early as some, like some of your elite world champions. They were like, for instance, Muhammad Ali. I think maybe just under 10 years old. I think, that's what some of them start. But for me, I did a bit of the classic. Played, had a go at football. Played for Rosington Juniors. Had a little go at that, but Didn't want really that interest. I were more like, oh, when I finish training, I can go back out on my bike and, go back to woods with lads and carry on doing jumps and whatnot. And then, yeah, and I had a bit of a go of it, but never really amounted to know. And then when I was, how old were I? I was 13, some lads, and I'd started playing rugby for school, but we played rugby union for school. But there's a local Donny team, Doncaster Tollbar. They did rugby league, and a couple of lads in my year. I know one of my mates, Cleggy, he were playing for them, and he said I were all right at rugby league. He says, "Why don't you come down and have a go at rugby league?" Because we played union for school. Because he obviously played with me at school. He says, "Why don't you come down and have a go at league with us? And what play at weekend?" I says, "Yeah, all right, I'll get a go. Quite like playing." So I had 2 seasons at that, and I wasn't bad at rugby. I enjoyed it, and again, I think it helped with boxing because rugby league it's a very rough, tough sport. Physical. We played it full on, and it helped keep me fit. Or in shape, and it was through rugby league that led me into boxing. I'd done 2 seasons at rugby league. Really enjoyed it. I wasn't looking for another sport, but during our pre-season, heading into my third year of rugby, I was 15, so just turned 15. One in pre-season training, our coach took us to a boxing gym, a gym that I ended up spending quite a few years training there as a pro. It's at Lindome Prison. It's on premises of Lindome Prison called Freedom. I think it used to be called Hatfield ABC. Now it's Freedom Amateur Boxing Club, but they've got pros in there as well. So as a rugby team, we went there once a week, just for fitness, just to build pre-season fitness. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I was like, oh, and at that age, from 13 to 15, playing rugby as a team sport, sometimes we might get beat, and then the bit typical lads, oh well, that's your fault that you let them score there, and so that, little tit for tat sort of arguing, and what got me thinking while doing that train, I thought, boxing, you're on your own, it's a solo sport, so maybe I'll have a go at that, and I remember going home at the time. My mum were working at Royal Mail sorting office in Donny Town Centre. So obviously and she'd mentioned to me before when I'd started going to this boxing training once a week with rugby. She'd just got chatting with her colleagues at work, and there were a bloke in town, never forget his name, called James Lister. He used to box amateur at Doncaster Plant Works, which is now, it's been there, over 100 years, some real history there in that amateur gym. And he'd become a Yorkshire champion. When my mum had mentioned, oh, my lad is started doing boxing training once a week. She got chatting with him about boxing. And I come home from training once, and because she used to work nights, I went and woke her up. Said, "Mum, I want to do boxing now. So I want to stop rugby and I want to start boxing." And I think she was knackered. She just went, "Yeah, yeah, I'll sort it when I get up. I'll sort it when I get up." Maybe she can't even remember, but once she'd got up, I was like, "Do you remember, Mum? I want to start boxing. Can you, help me find a gym and help me find out how I do it?" So she says, "All right, I'll ask James Lister when I get to work tonight. I'll ask lad at work, find out where he did it, if that gym's still going." She comes back next day when I spoke to her. She went, "Right, he used to go to Doncaster Plant Works. It's in Exthorpe. It's open whatever days it's open. So I'll take you if you really want to go." I says, "Yeah, really want to go." Remember going to school, coming back from school, and we're going. So she took me. I remember all the way there, butterflies in my stomach. Being that shy little introvert boy I was, like, oh, I'm gonna have to go into a boxing gym. I don't know what I'm doing. And when we got there, I think it was the last day because it was just about to head into summer holidays for school. And spoke to trainer Ken Blood, and he says, "Oh, he says you've come on wrong day, young." And he says, "We're closing up now. Today's last day." He says, "We're having just a short break, 2 or 3 week. and then we're going to come back in and get ready for season. So if you want to come, he give me a date. He says, come back in this day. And I was like, right, all right. And it were almost like, being the kid that I am, and my eldest daughter, she's exactly the same. When somebody of an authoritative figure, like for her, it's the teachers, because she don't listen to me. They'll be like,
Does
right,
any
this is
kid?
what you do. Yeah. So coach said, come in Monday, whatever date, and you can start. So I like, right, mum, that'll be us then. So went away and had a bit of summer holiday because I were off school. Carried on doing what I did, BMXing. But then I remember the day I was still really keen and really wanted to try this boxing out, and that were it. The date come round, I turned up, and I never forget. You know I can still remember that smell. First time ever smelling what it's like inside a gym. There were this old wooden chest in corner. He went, right, go and find a pair of gloves in there. And then just get on a bag and I'll come and find you later because he were looking after lads sparring. So this old smelly wooden box, searching round for a pair of gloves that matched. All soggy old ones, stinking of sweat. Found a pair that matched. And I remember going on and finding an empty bag, and like everyone at gym who had already been there, they were all like, they were working away on bag, but out corner of the eye, they were keeping an eye on new boy. What's new boy about? How good is he? But not knowing what to do, just stood square on, swinging like that, and then just non-stop. And I was like, I don't know what to do. He's just told me to hit a bag. So I'm just stood hitting a bag. And then he comes a few minutes later and he says, no, you're doing it all wrong. He says, what handed are you? I says, I'm a left-hander. He says, right, you're a southpaw. And he made a joke saying you should have been drowned at birth, southpaws. So he says, right. He says, this is how you stand. You stand with your right foot forward. Your right hand is your jab. And start jabbing, and this is your backhand. He says, they're your basics. Just do that. I'll be back in a bit. And he carried on going to the sparring, and then he come and had a good look at me, and give me that little bit of time, and he gave me some bit of praise. He says, "Oh, you've done this before, you." I think he must. I think knowing him now and been there as long as I had, it were just something. I think he said, you've done this before, you," and I think it helped with confidence. I was like, "Oh, this trainer thinks I've done it before. I must be all right." So it were that sort of comments that kept me going back. But that was my introduction into boxing. I was 2005, I was 15-year-old, and I've not looked back since. I'm 35 in March, so it's 20 years, and I still remember it like it were yesterday. But like I say, it has become my passion. It's now my full-time job. It's my only source of income, and it is still a passion. I'm not seeing it now as a job and a chore. I still enjoy going, and I sort of remind myself, that I get to be at home a lot, get to do school run with kids, spend a lot of time with kids, but still get to do my training, and I can call it, a job. I've managed to be good enough, to box on good shows and be a full time boxer. It were always a dream. I never knew I'd be good enough to achieve it, but just through hard work and dedication and discipline, it's got me to this point, and then 20 years later, I'm still performing at a good level, and there's big fights out there to keep me doing it as a job. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster. It's had its ups and downs, good moments, bad moments, but ultimately, I live sort of life with no regrets, and even the times when it went shit, and you'll have saying when life gets you a bit down, and it's unfortunately I can accept, and now I'm mature enough to realize it's just life. It's not just I'm having downs because I'm involved in boxing. It's, as we all know, life, it's got its funny ways of kicking you in bollocks no matter what you're doing in
Absolutely.
life.
Absolutely, and like I want to touch on back there what you said. Like there's a few bits that you said there, and like even for a shy kid, and I wasn't a particular shy kid, and I was a bit older when I walked into a boxing gym,
Yeah.
but walking into a boxing gym, shy or not, is a horrible kind of, like you say, the
Yeah,
nerve, the anxiety, everything that comes with it, because you're walking in there. There are all levels of boxers.
yeah,
Some big, some small, some good. And like you say, you never forget that smell. The smell of sweaty,
yeah,
stinking,
yeah,
soggy gloves.
yeah,
You know, and that smell of leather on the bags, if they've got good bags in there, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it takes some sort of grip, doesn't it, to like
yeah,
pluck up
yeah.
the courage to
It's
walk
like
into a boxing
it's
gym.
it's humbling, isn't it? Because no matter what kind of person you are, whether you're, like me, shy kid, or there's always that kid at school, that gobshite who thinks he's 10 men. It's humbling because you're open. Somebody who's really good with a mouth, they might say this and they say that, but when you go into a boxing gym, you're all equal, and you can't pretend to be good at boxing with your mouth. You have to show your ability, and it's humbling for everyone. Like, yeah. Did you? Because you were military, weren't you, Chris? Did you find it before you were in forces, or while you was in there?
I'd been a boxing fan for since I go back to as a kid. Obviously, I'm 45, so I grew up sort of 90s. Sat with my dad watching Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank, on
Yeah,
Friday
yeah,
night Fight Live, as it were, and stuff like that. And
yeah, yeah,
I remember listening to like Bruno and Tyson on the radio at stupid o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. So
yeah, yeah,
I've been a boxing fan for years. I always had a passion. I'd knock around. We got the fields with a pair of like 16-ounce gloves and knock seven
yeah,
bells of shit out of each other with a spot, not knowing what we were doing and stuff
yeah,
like that. But when you come through the military, especially my unit, the paras, you do something what's
yeah,
called milling.
yeah. I've
You
seen it
kind of
on the
fight
the
another.
SAS thing. Yeah,
Yeah, you've probably seen it. So you fight someone for a minute, no blocking, no real boxing.
yeah, just
And
swinging,
I've made
moves.
no secret again. It took me 3 attempts to pass P company through various injuries and that. But I milled twice the first time, twice the second time, and once on the last P company. No one's ever. I'm pretty certain, and I'll be surprised if there's anyone out there that's milled as many times as me. But that's where I found out I hit hard. And I
Yeah,
always joke about it. I turned up in 2 power after passing out of training with the nickname Hammer Hands, because
right. Yeah,
I knocked 4 people out. I stopped all 4 people I fought, and then got a bit too
before
big
you
for my
before your
boots.
minute was up, like you did them.
Yeah, pretty much like smashed them into a corner. So I was like, well, I've got a good dig here. So
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah,
I realised I had a bit of a knack for that side of things. I did a lot of training for the intercompany boxing and stuff. I never fought for the battalion or the regiment or anything like that. I wasn't good, but I kind of did it at a low level. And then I left it, toyed with it, always jump on a
yeah,
bag. And then I was actually 35 oh no, I was 30 when I had a white collar fight. The white
yeah,
collars
yeah,
that knocked around.
yeah,
That's why I'm not comparing my kind of boxing career to yours. But I started off. I did a white collar bout, and then end up fighting for the fire service. And before I know it, I end up on a show at Motorpoint on the unlicensed scene. It's all unlicensed.
yeah, yeah,
But I have a lot. I always try and give a shout out to the boxing gym and the head coach Sam Goodrum at Lions Den in Heanor in Nottingham, because I'd walked into a lot of big boxing gyms at the age of 30, 31, and they took one look at me and were like, "Yeah, just go and hit a bag over there." Whereas I
yeah.
walked
It's
into
brilliant.
to Lion, because of my age, I walked into Lions
Yeah,
Den and Sam the head coach took me under his wing, and I was able to fight 14 times. I kind of
that's good.
lost
Yeah,
once, and yeah,
it
and
doesn't matter. You
the
got you got you
unlicensed.
got to have a go then. Yeah, he didn't turn his back on you. He actually gave you that
Yeah,
time and allowed you to do it.
exactly that, mate. And you know what? I'll forever have it. You'll always have a place in my heart
Yeah, yeah,
because of that. And he was able for me
yeah,
to just try my hand at it. And like the unlicensed just gets a bit of a bad rep, but I've always said it
yeah,
gives people of a certain age that want to have a go at it get the
yeah.
opportunity. I was never an amateur. I never would have been a pro. So I had a good go at it, and I won a
That was
couple
your,
of
that
like
was your,
chocolate belts, if you like, and
that
stuff
was your
like that.
chance to get in ring and have a go, though, wasn't it?
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So, but I take my hats off to anyone, and surely you probably have the same opinion as well. You know, anyone that
yeah, yeah.
steps into the ring at whatever level, it takes some serious minerals because it's a horrible feeling. I bet. Do you still
Absolutely,
get
yeah.
nervous now?
Yeah, always, yeah, always. They just, I know how to control them. I think, I know I've heard a few, mainly younger lads are like, nah, don't get nervous. You're like, I know you're lying because if you ain't got nerves, then it's not something's not right.
You're either
You know, we all
psychotic or you're a liar.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because we all get nerves, and I think you need them because it's a form of adrenaline. I think, isn't it? I think. I don't know the set, but they keep you sharp. They keep you alert. You know, if you didn't have nerves and you were too relaxed, I don't feel like you're going to perform at your best. You know, and that's some. You know, you've had that feeling of nerves, and then adrenaline, and then when you've had your fight, whether you've won or you've lost, just that feeling of adrenaline and achievement, you know, of like, I've got in there, I've just had a scrap, you know, and I suppose, well, I don't know what it's like, you know, when you're in military and you've done an operation or you've been in sort of combat, and is that sort of similar, that when it's over, that adrenaline, you're like, I can't
Yeah.
tell you how it feels, but I wish I could, you know, pass you some for you to feel this fucking something what's pumping round my veins and what
Well,
I've got
you
now.
feel invincible, but it's also draining, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
and I've said, and I'm pretty certain you'll agree with me. There's a massive difference between training and sparring, and then going into the ring to fight. That adrenaline, and I experienced that for the first time. And I'll ask you the question in a minute, but I've done like I trick my forte was my cardio when I was boxing. I was fitter than most of the heavyweights on the circuit. I wasn't a
yeah, yeah,
particularly good boxer. I was just fitter, so I
yeah,
outworked everybody. But
yeah,
even when I've been at my pinnacle of fitness and I fought on a prize fight or three fights in one night, I did about a
yeah.
minute of pads and I'm hanging out my arse.
Yeah, I still get same now. You know, at the top, the level that I've been at, you're like, I'll be warming up in changing room, and they'll go like, right, four. You know, bang, bang, bang. I'm going, fucking hell, I've got
What's that
12 rounds
about?
to do that. Fucking, yeah. So yeah, I don't know how it does it, but yeah, it's like your mind likes to play tricks on you and test you, and I think what it is, it's the negatives, isn't it? The negative trying to get in and trying to plant the seed, and you've got to go, nah, I'll be all right, I'll be all right. And then lo and behold, you know, go out and do 10 or 12 rounds or get the fight done. You're like, "Ah, yeah, it's not as bad as I thought."
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one, and like you touched on there, like the rugby club that they use the boxing fitness for pre-season. Because again, I tell people, I have took people that are proper good runners, like sub 3 hour marathon runners, and I've took them on
Yeah,
the pads, and they are within a minute, they're like, "Pfft." The boxing
yeah.
fitness is next level, isn't it?
Yeah, it's highly recommended across loads for general fitness and well-being, isn't it? You know, uh, I think there's a part of me that almost takes that for granted, like maybe not realizing how much, not just fitness for boxing, but you know, like fitness across the plane. Like, because again, I've become a very good runner myself just by because I have to run, and I feel like the mindset helps. You know, of having knowing how to dig deep and push myself, you know, as well as other sort of like athletic and physical sort of stuff. You become like sort of good across the board. I'd always love to have a go at, you know, it's back on now, Gladiators. It's back on Saturday nights, isn't it? I always I feel like I'm a pretty decent all rounder. So I'd love to have a go, and because I'm small. And like you look at the gladiators, the fucking giants, aren't they? And I think,
Yeah.
and I just think you're all fucking bullies. I'd fucking love to have a go at them. That's something as well, which I feel like in my mindset as being a shy kid, there's always that one confident kid in whether it's school or whatever it is, sport, and nobody ever expects no of me with being quiet because I'm not, you know, like I remember watching first season at SAS Who Dares when Ant Middleton were explaining the grey man. He's just there, he's in background because he's quiet. nobody don't really draw any attention to herself, and I feel like I've been a bit of that because I'm quiet, and in a group I'll sort of just stand and sort of blend in without making too much noise. But then when it comes time to either perform or I remember it at like school races and stuff like that, I get that determined mindset going. I'm gonna fucking show these loudmouth bastards. They don't expect no. They're cocky and they're cocksure and they're doing that to make sure everybody knows. And in my mind, I'm like, right, I'm the quiet kid. They don't expect no of me. Watch me fucking turn this on. And it's sort of a bit of an attitude I've had towards all sorts of sport and things like that. So yeah, that's another sort of bit of a mindset that I have toward, I suppose, towards life in general. I'm happy to be a quiet kid, but when it's time to perform or work, I'll like try and let my performance and whatever I'm doing do the talking.
No, and fair play to you, Phil. Fair play to you, and it is, and I'm pretty much the opposite to the grey man. You can usually hear me coming before. Uh, I'm open about that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
don't, I don't, I don't mean any malice, but people know when I'm coming. I'll just say that.
yeah, yeah,
But no, so amateur career. Did you have? And I apologise. I know about your pro career, but I haven't
yeah,
seen a lot about your amateur career and whether you actually had one in. So did you go
yeah.
into the amateurs and bits and bobs?
Yeah, so since going into that, going into amateur boxing gym, that was me. I were fully invested in it. And so in total, I had 53 amateur fights, winning 35. Won the Yorkshire title about 5 or 6 times, and then went over to northeastern counties, Midlands counties, and always picked up titles there in the ABA championships. I always wanted to win an ABA title at the time. That I think that is still the most prestigious amateur title you can win. I didn't do bad. I got to semi-finals at ABAs as a junior, um, and the quarterfinals. I got to quarterfinals quite a few times as a senior as well, but I always come up against like an England squad lad. And I don't want to like. So I'm not bitter about it now. But the boxing politics. Oh, he's on England squad. He needs to go through so he can carry
Yeah.
on boxing. For he's been around years. He's this. He's that. And there were a few times the boxing politics stopped me from going further. It hurt at time, but as I look back again, I've no regrets. Something I hold quite proudly is out of all the lads in the amateurs that beat me, um, not one of them. Some of them have gone on to be good pros, and like myself, have captured the Lonsdale belt. But things like headlining in Vegas, fighting for world titles. Not None of the lads who's beat me has gone on to quite achieve as much as that. So it's almost like I can almost be like, well, I've had last laugh. But I think for people who maybe research, because I'm obviously well known now as Maxi Hughes, that's my professional boxing name, albeit it is sort of my stage name. It's not my real name. Real name is Dan. I was born. So this is where it gets complicated. I was born Daniel Hughes, um, which is my mother's maiden name and my mum's family name. So that is my birth certificate, Daniel Hughes. My mum then got married in 2000. So I was 5 or 6 when she got married to my brother and sister's dad. So then they changed my name as well to Daniel Wilkinson. So from the age of 5 or 6 up to the age of 18, I was Daniel Wilkinson. So 3 years of my amateur boxing career was under the name Daniel Wilkinson. And then my mum had been divorced um, a long time, and she said, "It's not your name, Wilkinson. So when you're 18, you can legally go to solicitors and have your name changed back." So when I was 18, went to solicitors and had my name changed back to my birth name of Daniel Hughes. So then I had my last 2 years as an amateur under the name Daniel Hughes. And then when I was 20 and turned pro, I had to because I filled my forms in to turn pro, and they were like, right, well, we've already got a registered professional called Danny Hughes, so we can't have two of you at the same name. So think of a name. And my granddad's nickname was Maxi, and he was a well-known character from village. So I followed, I took his name, his nickname on as well. And but now I'm sort of known as that, which I don't mind. I quite like Maxi. My granddad since passed away, and it's a way of carrying on his name. So anybody that sees me do well as a pro and like, oh, Maxi Hughes, what did he do as an amateur? They'll not find me because I didn't exist past 2010.
But that's probably why I couldn't find anything like online.
Yeah,
I was searching
yeah,
for bits and bobs, and I found bits, but I was like, that's why I said I was asked about your amateur career but now it makes sense.
yeah. So I had a 5-year amateur career. Never turned a fight down. Often took fights on 2 days' notice and stuff like that. So I lost 18 fights in total. Some of them, a couple of them, should have maybe gone my way, but that's boxing politics. There's one fight in particular, fought a kid from Leeds. I'd been on holiday. I think I was 18, 17 or 18 or what. I think I was 17. Been on holiday with my uncle and my granddad to Benidorm. They took me on a bit of a lad's holiday drinking. Come back from holiday and they were like, my coach says, right, I've got you a fight in a couple of days. I went, I'm not quite fit enough, can I at least have a week in gym before I get a fight? I ain't done no on holiday. And then my coaches went, oh, you'll be all right. We watched this kid box last week who you box. You'll easy beat him. So I went, all right,
that
I'll take your word for it.
that old chestnut, eh?
Yeah. And honestly, when people ask me now, who's one hardest you've hit? And he's called Johnny Graham. Since speak to him, he's on the bare knuckle scene now. Tough lad from Leeds, Johnny Graham is. He's got long hair, so he has cornrows when he fights. Kid from Leeds, nice lad as well, but he gave me a hell of a time. Bust my nose in first round, and the reason it was so hard. I mean, Johnny were a tough lad and he was coming forward, but I was just knackered, and I didn't think I'd won, just because I was so tired and my nose was splattered, and I think he looked a bit disappointed because I got my hand raised, and when I look back, maybe that's a fight that the boxing politics helped me, so
Yeah.
swings and roundabouts, and I can, again, I'm not bitter about it. It were all learning, and I enjoyed it. So it's part of becoming the adult and person I suppose I am today. So it's like life lessons, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, while we're on the topic of boxing politics, I didn't want to go. I was going to ask it later anyway, but we're here
Yeah,
now. So before we move on to
yeah,
your kind of pro career, because I've been quite more recently. I watched Dave Allen fight against Johnny Fisher, and obviously Dave Allen's from your kind of neck of the woods, Donny Way, isn't
yeah,
he? Um,
yeah,
I've been trying to get him on for ages, and he said yes, and
yeah,
then he's got tied up and stuff. But that fight for me, I was quite vocal about that on my YouTube channel about how it was disgusted because, in my opinion, it was a clear win. So the politics. Do you believe that the scoring systems could be different? Because in football now we get VAR, don't we? And I
yeah.
can't understand why you haven't got judges watching it with screens and then are able in the breaks to look back at the rounds and go, actually, what I mean, like slow mo perhaps or sped up and pick out. AI is brilliant now, so why not use
Yeah.
it when you're looking at? So they've got screens, they're watching the fight as well, but they've got these screens. So surely that'd be fairer because there've been so many controversial decisions of
Oh
recent.
yeah, and there's always we never quite know because there's obviously no proof. They always say brown envelope job. Is it? We'd love to know that, but I had it myself. 2023, 2 years ago, my big chance, biggest fight in my career, headline in America against the former undisputed champion George Kambosos, massive name in boxing. So went over to Oklahoma. And it's bad because people are still talking about it now. They're still raving out. You speak to people about it. I get a lot of messages saying, "I still can't believe you were absolutely robbed in America against Cambosos." It does hurt. It really hurts. I've gave my life to boxing. My big moment, my biggest moment of my career, and the judges stole it from me. And George, because that was an IBF world title eliminator. George then got the chance to go and fight Lomachenko for the IBF world title, and I'm like, that should have been me. That was my opportunity. So that hurts, but I think you're absolutely right. I feel like, I've discussed it for years, but my wife came up with a good suggestion. So obviously the judges are sat ringside, and I think with the crowds, I think they can be influenced by crowds, because there's been times where, well, let's take for instance the George Kambosos fight. So we're boxing away, and his dad is in his corner, and his dad is an absolute gobshite. And he were throwing shots, and there were sometimes they were missing. And his dad's going, "That's it, George. You've hurt him there, George. You've hurt him." And I feel like saying, "He fucking missed. He's not even hit me." But it all could, judges are listening to that. Judges, it's hard because the judges are sat right next to him, and they're going, "Oh, maybe that's their plan. Oh, yeah, maybe that were a shot there." And it's slightly influencing.
Yeah.
So let's just say we have the three judges ringside who give their scores. I feel like there should be three judges in separate cubicles, backstage watching it on screen, because it's a different view from watching. The judges are sat. The floor of the ring is here, and they're looking through the ropes. And they're having to try and keep their eye on the action like that. They've got all the crowd, cameramen, and everything surrounding. There's a lot of potential distractions there, as well as the corner team shouting. So I feel like when it's a really controversial ending, these three judges who were sat backstage in a cubicle, uninfluenced, with some headphones on mute, so they can't hear anything, they score it. And when the judges at ringside, I feel like they should compare when it's a
Yeah.
controversial, when the judges at ringside have got it so wrong, because it's quite easily to tell, isn't it, when
Yeah.
it's gone wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like, right, whatever we call them, we go to the other panel of judges, and I don't know the full solution to this, but I feel like that could be doing with being looked at, especially for title fights, because that's where it really matters.
Yeah.
Um,
No. No.
not that any other fight don't matter,
No. I
but
know where you're coming
it's
from, but
it's it's because they're going to say, well, where do we draw a line? You think, all right, well, let's go with championship fights where there's a lot on the line, there's belts, and there's massive opportunities for the winner, and obviously not for the loser. So we need to, the I feel like the people involved in boxing, they need to sort of get their heads together and work out a solution for things like that, because it's life changing. It's a matter of having life changing opportunities taken from you.
and not only
Which
that as well, we talk about all that kind of stuff, but again, we're all quite casual about boxing, and people find it a little bit weird that you enjoy. I used to enjoy getting punched in the face. I still love sparring now. That
yeah,
feeling of like the ache that you get on your nose when you've been
yeah,
smashed. It's weird to explain to people, but and because we're quite casual about it, and pro boxers are quite casual, but in effect, you're putting your life on the line. Sadly, there are numerous boxers that have suffered, life-changing injuries and, and
yeah, yeah,
and deaths as well in the ring. So
yeah,
it's not like you're going out for a game of tennis, not taking anything away from a tennis
yeah,
player, but
yeah,
you've got
yeah.
something. But in tennis, again, they have the kind of the,
They've
the,
got
the
systems in
technology.
place, haven't they? Yeah, to make
Isn't it?
sure
So
that
why
it's
would you not have that in boxing?
scored correctly. Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, what I've come to realise in my age and maturity and experience, professional boxing is a great sport, as boxing is, but it's a shit business, and it's more of a business than it is a sport.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
hear you.
and an answer that, like, when you watch boxing, there's a controversial decision which the wrong guy gets it. An answer which we were only the other week we were talking about this in gym with my coaches and gym mates. The typical answer is, well, it's boxing, isn't it? It's boxing, it happens. And I'm like, that's just a
Shouldn't.
shit. It's a shit answer, and we shouldn't accept that. The people, like, again, when it happened to me in Oklahoma over year, because it were all happens quick. The judges who fucking do this wrongdoing, they quickly then their job's done. They've got no more obligations. They go and get on the business class flight and they fly to the next city and they get ready for the next thing. What I should have done is got hold of them and said, "Oh, come here, fuck in this room now. I need a chat with you. Explain to me this, that, what sort of what the fuck you playing at, sort of thing." Because the judges never get held accountable. They don't get put on an interview. Say, why did you, because they can print the scorecard. The scorecards go public. So it's like, how have you scored this round, this or that? Hold them accountable, interview them, interrogate them, whatever it needs to be, to say why. What's your reasoning
And
behind
and,
that?
and, and, I, and I guess the weird bit is with it, and I think that would eliminate a lot of problems if you had sort of a different system, because again, every single fight is subjective. Like
Yeah,
we go back to obviously quite recently the Usyk v Tyson Fury fight. I thought that it was close. I thought it was close, but I thought the right person. I had it closer. I had Usyk up by 2 rounds. It
yeah.
was
I
close.
had him. I had him 1 or 2 as well. I thought same as you. Close fight, but the right man got it.
Exactly, it's like you said with the influence there, because there was a lot. If you look at it back again, and I
Yeah,
rewatched the fight after because you
yeah,
missed stuff, and I
yeah,
rewatched it, and there was loads and loads of punches that were hitting. Everyone were going, "Oh!" The commentary as well, can be very
yeah,
biased. They were
yeah,
hitting
yeah.
on the gloves, and people going, "Oh, that's a scoring shot." It was on the gloves. It's not a scoring shot.
Yeah, it's not scoring blow. Yeah, yeah. And then some people, so you hear some people say, "Yeah, but he was the aggressor. He was the one who threw more." And it's like, you don't get points for throwing punches that don't land.
No, but you can
If that
stand in
were
the corner and
if that
fucking
were
windmill,
case,
then,
just
can't
stand
you?
in the corner and do that. Oh, I've won. I threw more.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I
So
don't know. I don't know. I hope they do fix it, because again, I think it's leaving a sour taste in people's mouths with fights, and especially from a sort of a fan perspective as well.
yeah,
Because these boxing fights, they're all now 29.99 or whatever. A lot of them are pay-per-view and
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that. And from a
yeah,
fan, you're paying that money to see, in my eyes, which is total corruption. So I think there
yeah, yeah,
definitely needs something to be done. Anyway, we digress.
yeah,
Let's talk about you. Let's get back on track. So obviously, you had a fairly kind of successful and amateur career, and like you say, you come
yeah.
close to that ABA kind of title and stuff like that. But when was it? When was the turning point when you went right? Because you can stay, because a couple of years back I was contemplating just signing, because I think 42 was the cutoff for amateur.
Yeah, I think it's still the same now.
40, I was going to sign up, do the medical.
Yeah,
I did the medical, and I was going to have, so I could tick off that I'd had an amateur fight. But then I
yeah,
thought quickly about, I'd be in the ring with some 20-year-old at 40 odd, and I thought,
yeah.
in my head, in my mind, I can beat fucking Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. That's my
And that's
mindset.
that's the mindset you need. I remember someone said, "How'd you feel?" I was like, "Oh, so I forget how it came about." But this young lad, he says, "You're as old as you feel," and I thought, it's right, isn't it? And like, but if you look after yourself, like I'm class, like my last opponent said I was old, at 34, and he's 28, and I put him in his place.
Yeah,
It
absolutely. Well,
shows,
you
doesn't
had
it?
10 years on that, and then see how you feel. I tell you, you definitely do. Someone told me once you get past 40, you know about it. I was like, get out. And do you know what? At 45 nearly now, I'm like, yeah, fucking hell, they were right. Um, but yeah, so you kind of, when was the decision that it was like, right, because not all amateurs go pro, and some go later on than others. What
Yeah,
age did you suddenly have that inkling, or someone said to you, you know what, you've done as much as you can at amateur, why don't you turn pro?
yeah. So it was my own decision that I made. So there's a kid who I was a boxing amateurs called Chad Gaynor. He'd won an ABA title, and then he won the ABA title, and then the year after, so he was coming to defend his title, and he'd moved up a weight to my weight. So I drew him in the first round of the Yorkshires to find out who's the champion at Yorkshire to move on to next level, and I beat him. and I beat him, and I was like, well, I've done all right there. I've just beat the last year's champion. So I just turned 20 as well. I was 20-year-old, and that was my dream. In my mind, I knew a lot of lads who was on the amateur circuit at the time had started turning pro. So I was like, right, if I can win the senior ABA title here, it gives me a good bargaining chip to go to the managers and promoters in the professional game, and I might get a good deal. I might be able to get myself more money, sort of signing on bonus and stuff like that. So that I were hell bent on winning ABA title. Ended up getting out of Yorkshire. I got to quarterfinals, and the scoring system back then in amateurs were different. So it was, I think there were 3 or 4 judges, and there was all linked up. They had a red button and a blue button for red corner, blue corner, and the rules were like your scoring points. So the face to the torso, when the white knuckle part of the glove, which the amateurs use, when that connects with the scoring part of the body, you're supposed to click. But all 3 or all 4 judges have got to press within like 2 seconds. So if they don't all press together within that 2 second gap, it doesn't count as a point. So and then in between rounds, while you've completed round 1, you're sat on stool ready to go out for round 2. The judges give you a little printout of the score of that round. So going into last round, third and final round at quarterfinals, it was 3-3, so we were level. So my corner showed me. He never used to show me, but it felt like it was necessary then to show me. He went, look, he says it's 3-3. Go out there and win it and get yourself into the semis. So I felt like I went out and gave a good performance. In my head, I'm thinking, right, hit him and don't get hit. And I felt like I did that. And then when they read the scores out, and a winner through to semi-finals with a score of 4 points to 3. So I'm like, right, there's only one of us who scored 1 point. That means there's only one punch being landed in that round. And they give it over lad like. So I was fuming. I thought, there's no way I've lost that. And not even that. They've told me then with that score that I didn't land a single punch. And all it takes is and all the judges were really old as amateurs. So it's like they've got 2 seconds to press when they see the punch. So that was the final straw for me. I was like, now fuck this amateur game. At least if I'm professional and it happens as a professional, at least I'll get paid. So that was my thinking behind it. While I was in that process of thinking about turning pro, another amateur fight came. Now I was out of the ABAs. They literally just brought them in. They started doing a belt. So they called it an association belt for Yorkshire. So these belts were available, and they said, look, there's a fight available for belt at your weight. Do you want to fight? And I said, yeah, we'll do. I was ready. I was training. So I fought for belt and I won. Excuse me. So I won this Yorkshire Association belt. And then this kid who I'd beaten, Chad Gaynor, who was 3-0 as a professional and he'd been boxing on Sky Sports shows, only on undercard. But I became friends with him on Facebook, and I'd seen he seemed to be doing really well as a professional and all that. So I just messaged him. Says, hey, up, mate, looks like you're really doing well as a professional, happy for you. And I was just basically like, how do you turn pro? What do you do? I've got no idea how you do it. I don't know anyone who else is professional other than you. So it was his amateur coach who'd gone and got his professional trainer's coach, and he'd knew a couple of guys who were managers. So he told his trainer, and obviously they knew me because they'd fought me in amateurs. So then his trainer rung me And he said, "Oh, Chad says you're thinking of turning pro." I says, "Yeah, yeah." He says, "Why don't you?" He didn't put no pressure. He says, You're more than welcome to come over and train with us in Rotherham. Chad's training for a professional fight. He's fighting a southpaw like you, so it'd be good if you could help him out, do a few rounds." I was like, "All right, yeah, sound." So went over, helped Chad out to do a few rounds sparring. And then they said, "Oh, if you're turning pro, there's a local manager from Huddersfield. He's got loads of boxers. He'd got current British champion at that time, Gary Sykes. And he says, we can put you in touch, get your managers, get a contract." And then I realised, it didn't matter then that I'd not got an ABA title. I know if I'd got that ABA title, I might not necessarily got that more money that I was thinking I was going to get. Being 20-year-old and naive about the business of professional boxing, it didn't sort of matter unless you was an Olympian,
Yeah.
and an England squad lad who the top promoters like Eddie and Frank Warren, they've already got their eye on those England guys already as they're coming through the ranks. And because I wasn't that, they didn't have their eye on me. So yeah, turned pro at 20-year-old with Chris Aston, who was my manager. Chad Gaynor was my stable mate, and his amateur coach who turned professional. They was my trainers. And again, that felt like yesterday, and that was 15 years ago.
Yeah, time flies, doesn't it? Time
Yeah,
certainly flies. But
and
it's
again, I was so naive about pro. All that, right? I'm a professional boxer now. When I fight, I'm going to get paid, even though I was still a painter and decorator on site, driving a transit van. I was like, well, I'm gonna make my money. I'm gonna be retired at 30. Probably have a Ferrari or two in garage. Big massive house, and I'll be sorted. Life's gonna be good, and I still ain't got a Ferrari. I'm 34 and I'm still fighting. So,
yeah, but
yeah, been
that's
naive. I learned.
that's how it's kind of portrayed, isn't it? What people don't understand is like back down to my level on unlicensed. I still had to sell tickets if I wanted to. I mean, I donated all the money I made to various firefighters because I fought for the fire service for firefighters charities now. But you're only talking a couple of £100. But at every level, and you look at your likes of Floyd Mayweather against Manny Pacquiao, they still have to advertise and sell tickets for the fight. That's how come they get money. Obviously, I
Yeah,
know sponsorship when you're a bigger name and stuff like that, but
yeah,
the whole thing about making money is just by selling tickets. And there are a lot of pros early on in the career, and I think I can't remember. It might have been Joe Kawasaki or someone was talking about it on a documentary, and they were just saying, I'd had so many pro fights, and I still was only making like maybe a top £5 a fight.
yeah. I think
And
it
you
was
just
Kawasaki. He was British champion, undefeated, knocking everyone out, and he's like, he's on the verge of going to sign on because he's got no money.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah,
Well, what you
absolutely.
touched on there, I wanted to just like go back a bit because you was on about the amateur scoring system again. In my head, because you wear vests in amateur, you wear head guards, or you did wear head guards. Did he still wear head guards in amateur?
They've changed it now. I think at senior level, if you're intermediate or open class senior, you don't have to wear the head guard. But the juniors still wear an head guard.
So I just think with the scoring system, with the technologies come on in so many different ways and everything else. Surely
Yeah,
you could wear it's like a sensors on your vest, sensors on
yeah,
your
like
gloves,
laser
sensors
tag
on your
sort
head
of thing.
guards. Do you know what I mean? Like a big game of
Yeah,
Laser Quest only for boxing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, something needs to be done, in professional and amateur, because it happens all across the board. There's not as much at stake, albeit it still hurts the same to young lads who's put the life on line, and it's their dream, and it gets taken away from them by, you know, inaccurate scoring, which is not right, and nobody gets held accountable for it, which is the worst part. So yeah, it's just. It's hard, isn't it? It's so hard, but that's where again it comes into, especially at professional level.
Yeah.
Business comes first.
Yeah, it does, and it doesn't. Sadly, it does in a lot of industries. They treat them as a business when it shouldn't really be treated like that. But look, I'm not naive enough to kind of dismiss it. I understand money does make the world go round and
Yeah,
everything else, but that shouldn't come in the form of corruption. It still should be
yeah.
done fairly, But
That's where like a bit of a saying I've sort of not come up with, but it's like boxing must be one of or the only sport where the best athletes, the best fighters don't necessarily get to the top. Like running, Olympic running. If you're a fast runner, it doesn't matter if you sell tickets or you've got a great personality. If you can run 100 meters the fastest, you're going to get to the top, no matter selling tickets or not. Same with other sports. If you're a fantastic footballer, you're going to get picked up and you're going to get to the top, whether you sell tickets or you've got a larger than life personality or not. Whereas boxing, they want you to be so like, that I think. Just going back to my last fight, I got an amateur in um, to help me sparring. He was very similar in stature and he was a good southpaw. He was probably better than my opponent, but I brought him in for my sparring partner, to help me prepare for my fight. And he again, he's boxed for England. He's a couple of national champion, very good amateur. And I said he's 21. And I said, are you going to turn pro? He said, I'm going to have one more go in ABAs and then I'm going to turn pro. He says, but, he'll rumming and ahhing about it. I says, you are brilliant. You've got some serious ability. He says, I can't be arsed selling tickets. And you're like, and if he doesn't want to do it because of the business side of boxing, it's like boxing's missed out there because he is a fantastic boxer and he could potentially go a long way in the sport.
yeah,
Whereas that's hard. That's heartbreaking, isn't it?
it is, and it goes back to what you were saying there, and I don't want to like drag in any names, but the current heavyweight, and I talk about the heavyweights because that's obviously what I kind of boxed at, much below the level I'm talking about, but like you look, and I find it really hard to believe that they use some of the heavyweights that we got out there, that's the best that we have got to offer. And I take nothing away
Yeah.
from Anthony Joshua's achievements and everything else, but let's be honest, he is a marketing dream. The
Oh
way he
yeah. Yeah.
looks, the way he's
Absolutely. Yeah.
built. So I can't help
Yeah.
but think his career was looked after a little bit, allegedly. I don't know any, but
Yeah, and
it
that's where
would
the
appear
business
that.
comes in. Yeah, and why I always preferred Tyson Fury, which it took a long time for Tyson Fury to be accepted, whereas Anthony Joshua, it was sort of say this, say that. It wasn't allowed to be his own personality, his own person. Whereas I always admired Fury because he didn't give a shit. It was his own person. Nobody was telling him what to do. I remember he got a 10 grand fine early in his professional career because again it's because football it's known for its fights and hooliganish. The British Boxing Board of Control said no boxer is allowed to wear a football shirt for their ring entrance. And he says, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to wear a Man United top to ring. Nobody told him what to do. So they went, Tyson, you can't do that. We're going to have to fine you. He went, fine me.
Find me, watch me.
He just paid fine. I went, I'll just wear a Man United top. Didn't care. And you're like, I admire that because nobody's controlling him. Nobody's telling him what to do. And unfortunately for him, they couldn't cancel him and he rose to the top and he became, biggest name for his time. And, one of the biggest names probably in heavyweight boxing because of his character and nobody controlled him.
Well, he made himself marketable by being outspoken and being a character. And again,
Yeah.
it's two ways, isn't
Eventually,
it?
people had to accept him, didn't they? Because they're
Yeah,
like, this is him. Nobody's
yeah.
changing him.
It took a bit of time, and like you say, you either go down the kind of marketer's dream or you go down the outspoken. And there's no middle bit.
Yeah.
If you're kind of a little bit in the middle, and you might be the best boxer in the world as well. And like I say, if you're not selling the tickets or people don't know, or you're not picked up by a good marketing team, and you've not been marketed correctly, and you've not had your career kind of managed correctly, there's probably boxers out there that are long past, that never made a name, but might have beat some of the greats, and there is
Yeah,
as if some books
yeah,
in it, but you know where I'm
yeah,
coming from.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and there is a load of boxers who's brilliant, but they're probably, nobody will ever hear of them because they've not been picked up, they've not been marketed, or they can't be asked to sell tickets, and they're like, I don't want to be part of that professional world and selling tickets and putting myself out there. It sort of changed a lot, as social media has obviously changed a lot. And when I turned pro in 2010, I'd not long myself since I'd Facebook, but that was sort of the first one I really got onto, and it wasn't that big at the time, so it's massively grown over the last 15 years, and that's been hard for me. I still find it hard now to, you know, being that shy kid, putting myself out there.
Yeah.
You're open globally for the people to either write shit about you, which you get every now and again. I understand you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Get some hate, but most of the time, I've always said, like Fury, I'll always be myself. I've got more confident through boxing and doing interviews and stuff to be able to put videos of myself talking and made a YouTube channel trying to give my opinion on boxing and talk about stuff. So that boxing's gave me that confidence, but I'll always just be who I am. I won't try and be something I'm not. I will never, never try and put a persona on because it's hard to keep up, isn't it?
Oh well, you just get caught out, and not only that as well. Like you touching on social media, there. Look, social media is toxic as you like. You get
Yeah,
haters, you get people on there and trolls and haters. I've had my own experiences with them recently with doing the podcast, and
yeah.
and I want to say like I don't give a crap what they think, but it does get to you. Yeah, I'm not going to lie,
It
but
it just bothers you. What it gets me, you probably feel the same. You're like you. It annoys you because they're only saying it because they're not in front of you face to face.
absolutely, they wouldn't
And they're
dare. They
like,
would
that's
not
what
dare.
bothers me. Yeah, that's what bothers me is, and again, like going back a bit a random story. My granddad had passed away, and it was like an anniversary or his birthday. And I did an Instagram post, a couple of pictures of my granddad, and there was one where load of, even I think it was my mum and that for his birthday. They'd got him a stripper, and I put the picture up. You couldn't see anything. She had no top on, but she had a back to you. And I think the picture was obvious that it was a stripper. I put it on, and within seconds, Instagram had sent me a message and took it down. Like, this is potentially offensive. We've took it down. You're like, it's not that offensive. You couldn't see anything. Um, the lady had a back to us. You couldn't see who it was. Her face wasn't on it, so she couldn't be identified. But yet they let people create fake accounts with
I know,
hidden identities just to bully and
to
abuse
be
people. And you're
trolls.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's what fucking gets me. Like, you're like, I'd love to have it, meet up with these trolls. I've come off Twitter because
Oh,
I felt like Twitter was the worst
it's the
place for it.
toxic. I've
So,
not even gone on
yeah,
that, mate. I'm on quite a lot
no,
of social media, but it's a
yeah,
necessary evil. I didn't. I was off social media for maybe 6, 7 years, and you know what? It was refreshing to be off it. But if you want to push in the modern world, if you want
yeah,
to push what you're trying to do, like I wouldn't have a podcast now if I wasn't on social media. It's that
yeah,
simple. So it's the
yeah. It's
same.
got.
You want to kind of help promote your boxing career. You've got to be on social media, but
Yeah,
Twitter,
it's
no way.
pros and cons to it both, isn't there? I feel like there's more cons because it's fake, especially Instagram with people posing this fake life and this fake reality that they've got, and then you've got the trolls and the negativity and fake news. But it's good for getting yourself out there, and like you say, you've got a podcast through it. I'm able to promote myself and sell tickets through it. It's a good tool for that. So there's pros and cons to it. Like I say, it is. I feel like the world is a better place without it. Like you say, it's refreshing. With way it's. I feel like, well, you could say damaging the youngsters of today because they're all like this. I feel like I was quite pleased the other day. So I don't know if you know, it's out near Bawtry. There's a place called Harwell, only a small village, and there's a woods. And I went for a walk through there with Mrs. and kids. We like to, we make sure we do get outside. And it were refreshing to see a group of youths, youngish lads, that got the shovels on the backs
Yeah,
and they were building jumps. And I was
building
like,
ramps.
yes, yes, lads. There is still some proper lads having a proper childhood and doing, being outdoors, doing things kids should do rather than on the phones and doing fuck all like that. I thought, yes, that's good to see that, they're out there.
I feel like I talk about this pretty much. I touch on this topic, and it's a common denominator. I touch on this topic on just about every podcast I do, and everyone sort of opinion, because of the majority of the people that I talk to. Obviously you're a bit younger than myself by sort of 11 years. So, but I do talk to people that are sort of your similar generations, if not, even
Yeah.
though there's a bit of an age difference, where you still did that. And I say it quite a lot. And I always play devil's advocate, because I always kind of say, if we had that sort of access to social media when we were younger, would we have been the same as them?
Yeah,
You know what I
it
mean?
is. Yeah, there's a part of me
And I'm
that
just glad I grew up without it.
I was just going to say I'm glad I was born in the year that I was born. I don't think I got a phone till I was about 11, but then 2001. The quality of the phones was just a phone call and a text message. So it was my mum obviously realizing there's this technology now that she can give me so she can check where I am and what I'm doing, almost for a bit of safety. It's like, oh, where are you? What you doing? Or can you be home, or I need you, or whatever. So it was very much just something that were in my pocket that my mum could get hold of me on or inform me of something. Or when a couple of mates got, we could phone each other, and it wasn't something we'd sit on and all have our heads buried in it, because the phones simply couldn't do anything other than phone and text. So yeah, I feel so happy that my childhood was without phones. Back in day when it were like, right, where we're going, is he at home? I don't know. We're gonna have to ride his bikes round. We're gonna have to knock on his door and ask his mum and dad if he's in. And if not, we'll have to go down to local spots and see where they are.
Yeah, well, that's it. We used to say it was a joke. I mean, the 11, God, they weren't mobile. I mean, my first mobile phone, I was 18 and in the military, and it was only one that were about that big, and it was only what you
Yeah,
could do
phone
calls
and
and
text.
messages on.
Yeah,
And, for a long time, that's how it was. And that was fine. You'd send a message, you'd make a phone call. It was a good way of staying into. But as soon as they brought the internet out onto phones, that's when it changed.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
That's
used
the
to have
changing
to chase it.
factor.
If you missed the meeting point at 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night,
Yeah,
you'd spend your whole
yeah,
night trying to search for every fucker, wouldn't you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
No.
remember I've got a funny story. I forget how old I was. Obviously, before phone, we were playing offs, hide and seek, but in winter when it was pitch black. And I went off hiding and I picked up, oh God, it was best I'd ever done. And I was gutted. So I was in for ages. I were up these conifers in somebody's garden. I was like, where the fuck are they? Nobody, I can't even hear anybody walking past to see where I am. I think I'd, what, right? I felt like a lifetime I was there, and I was like, I can't even hear anybody. Let's go and see lamppost where we started off. Let me go
Yeah.
back. And they'd all fucked off. There were nobody's bikes there. They'd all gone. And I just went home. The next day I saw them at school. I went, what fucking happened? They went, well, nobody could find you. We found everybody else. So we
We
all
got
went
bored and
home.
fucked off.
So it was
Brilliant.
next day that I fucking had to give them the bollocking at school. Like, you fucking left me. And they said,
Yeah,
well,
it's
you shouldn't have been so good.
good memories though. Like I say, fond memories of playing outside,
Yeah,
mate. But
yeah, yeah.
but obviously, right, back to the boxing again. So obviously you turned pro, and to be fair, like your first obviously 9 fights without a loss, and then you fought,
Yeah.
your 10th fight, you kind of how did you get on with that? Because Scott Cardle,
Yeah, Scotty Cardle, yeah.
yeah. So that was your kind of first loss, and I always look. I make no secret again, and I always try and drop it in there that the podcast is aimed at trying to raise awareness for mental health and at least talking about it and stuff. And whether what avenue that was, and kind of bouncing back from adversity, I think you can kind of put that, whatever adversity it is you've suffered, you can then kind of, you move forward. And that's what I try and address and
Yeah.
try and kind of talk about. So in your career, you go into 9 fights, which is pretty impressive. Because we have heard of people that have lost their debuts and stuff and then
Yeah.
gone on
Yeah.
to achieve.
Yeah.
You've got 9 fights, 10th fight, obviously feeling confident. You're bound to. You go into that fight and you get your first loss. How did that
Yeah.
affect you?
Well, as soon as I come out of that fight, feel obviously gutted to lose, but it was how the fight went. Because it was my first fight on Sky on a big show. I'd boxed on small hall circuit, and this was my first opportunity on a Sky Sports show, like the big shows. And I was too nervous. I can honestly say I was just too nervous, and I lost that fight. Like you were saying, I lost that fight before I got in ring.
But
And
he was
not
10
not
and
that,
0 though. He was 10 and 0, so
yeah,
he was
both of
obviously a
us
good fighter.
undefeated. He'd had his entire career because he was an England squad lad. He was picked up from the amateurs, turned straight pro on these big shows. So we were used to it. Whereas me, I'd come from nothing, come up the hard way, and I was just nervous, and not nervous that I was scared of him. I remember the first 4 rounds boxing going. I was scared to throw a punch because I didn't want to make a mistake. I was like, "Don't make a mistake," and then don't get hit with a silly shot and get put down because you're on telly. There's a
It
lot
was
of
the
people
event,
watching.
wasn't it? It was the
Yeah,
event, the
but
size of the
the
event.
occasion got to me, and it wasn't until 4 rounds had gone and he won every round because I didn't do no. And then my trainers were like, "What are you doing? Come on, get going. You've trained better for this." And then I started to come into the fight. It was a 10-round fight. Um, and I finished the fight strong. We had a clash of heads and he got a bad cut. I got a cut in the head, which luckily the blood was coming down the middle of my nose, whereas he had bad one here on both eyes. So we were having a bit of an hard time, which gave me confidence. And I finished the fight pretty well. But because I'd give 4 rounds away at the beginning of the fight, I were always chasing it.
It's always to claw back in it when you're down 4 rounds.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it
it's
was too
only
late.
4 rounds, but it's still 4 rounds.
Yeah, so I was gutted about that. But then I remember being in a hotel after the fight hotel in Blackpool, and I was getting some good feedback, and it was that, you started not very well, but you finished strong. If you'd have just started, and I was like, right, I've experienced that now. And then Eddie Earn come over to me and he gave me some words of it. He says, look, that's how it went. And a few people around at breakfast in the hotel next day, boxing people whose opinions are respected, were like, you'll do something, keep the right attitude, learn from this, go forward, and now you've experienced it, you won't let that bother you again.
That's good
So,
to hear. That probably
yeah,
did you good, didn't it?
yeah. So we're back, got back in gym, and we're like, right, let's rebuild, let's carry on. I'm not going to let it bother me. I would have loved to have won. But in life, we can't win everything. We can't have everything we want in our own way, can we? So,
Yeah.
no, I felt like that sort of attitude was probably what helped me move forward. Not dwelling on that loss and just moving on and thinking, right, it's life. And unfortunately for me, I'd done bits of reading of successful people and read the stories of the people who I found influential. Like Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Those people, they have failures. Pretty much every person who's successful has failed and it's not
Absolutely.
gone their way. So it's like, right, I'm not the only one, not the first person this has happened to. So if you want it to go on, get back on the horse and get back to it.
Yeah, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and everything else, and I think what you see is, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's massively glamorized now with the likes of obviously Floyd Mayweather finishing undefeated, like
Yeah,
51 fights, I think it was, and I think a lot of probably young kids because of social media again will see that and go, well, and you see it now and with commentary and with
yeah, no, yeah. It just seems to be an attitude around professional boxing that a couple of losses are always done. Whereas I prefer the UFCs. I don't watch it a lot UFC, but I keep my eye on it a little bit, but their attitude towards it is the best fight the best. And someone, unfortunately, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. Whoever loses, they're back in bigger fights, which is the attitude and of which boxing needs. All right, he's lost. Get him back in a big fight. Let's see what he can do. And a lot of time, like McGregor, for example, he's had losses, but he's come back. He's lost. He's come back. Don't matter, does it? It's
I think it's
their attitude towards it is better than around boxing. I feel.
yeah. No, I agree, and sometimes I think it's the look. Let's be honest. I think it's the way in which you lose. If you lose a couple of fights on a close decision, then that
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily reflect your ability. I think if you suffer 3 or 4 devastating knockouts in round 1 or round 2, you might think, you know what, your
yeah,
punch
and
resilience gone.
it's obvious
Maybe
to
it's
see.
time for your own health.
Yeah, your footwork's not what it used to be, or your reactions are not what it used to be, and if it's that sort of thing, I think that what happened with the kid who beat me, Scotty Cardle. He went on to have a good career, became British champion, but because he was a what I call reaction fighter, hands down, relied on reactions. A lot of time, you see, they disappear quite quick, and he ended up with a couple of bad early knockouts, what rounds 1 and 2 knockouts. So I think he's been retired about 6 years, and even though he beat me again, I've gone and surpassed what he achieved in boxing, and you know how my career's gone. But yeah, it's just like you say, as long as you're honest with yourself, you don't keep getting in the ring when you generally shouldn't be in there.
Yeah.
I've told that to my missus, if I start, not being able to perform and I'm getting beat up badly,
Time to
I will call it a day. Yeah,
yeah.
obviously for my safety, but obviously if I'm married with 2 kids, so it's I've got that life to have after, well, now and after boxing.
Absolutely, and you see it quite a lot where you kind of boxers and some UFC fighters, and you see
Yeah,
the before and after where they've took so much damage, and it's starting
yeah,
to affect. And I fought last year in April at 44 years of age for the fire service, and I
yeah,
wasn't gonna. And again, I'm not comparing my levels way lower than pro and all that, but like I went in and I won in 52 seconds. I stopped the guy in 52
yeah,
seconds, but in that 52 seconds, I damaged my shoulder and tore my hamstring. So
yeah.
I was like, you know what?
Oh,
And these are
yeah,
3 round bouts, 3 or 4 round bouts, And it was
yeah,
at that point that I literally walked away and gone, you know what? I can't keep doing this. I'd love to because I love it, and in my head,
yeah,
I
yeah,
can do it. But my body, I've suffered that many injuries now, and that's not even at kind of top flight level. That's way down the pecking order. So I just think, wow, it is what it is. But if you can still keep doing it, and I mean, you're what now, 34,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and and, and,
34,
and
35 in March. Yeah,
and without being offensive to you, you're getting into the ages now. But that's what I wanted to kind of like touch on with, because you went another, I think was it another 7 fights before you got a draw, and then another loss.
yeah.
With Martin Ward, is that right?
Martin J. Ward, yeah, I had 3 fights with him, a draw and 2 losses, yeah. But again, he were another really good kid. But yeah, that's that. My sort of career went like that. I was happy to take the big fights, and if I lost, some of them bothered me. But again, it were always that I want to carry on being a boxer, so I'll carry on. I'll rebuild. I'll rebuild myself, um, and get back to it. And I managed to always rebuild myself and get myself back to a title opportunity, and every time I fought for a title, even though if I lost, always gave a good account of myself, a good performance, which, then my name, I suppose my name started gathering a bit of credit, like, oh, he's good for a title fight. He comes and he gives his best, and he's pretty good. Always gives a good account, a good performance. So I were able to rebuild myself and keep getting myself into positions to fight for titles.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and like some of the names you're for, like you know, the George Cambeses Jr. and stuff like that. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
he is a kind of a very well-known fighter, and you feel
yeah,
like and a lot of other people share your kind of thing, me included.
yeah,
That we, they think that you kind of so if you're able to keep up with them, and I think if you're able to give a really good account of yourself and arguably win, even though that it didn't go your way,
yeah,
then why not? And it's only up to you. There's a lot of people that I see it talking about Derek Chisora now and saying, she don't. And I think, well, that's down to him. Only
yeah,
he knows
yeah,
how he
yeah.
feels. And if he's still giving a good account of himself and he feels okay, who am I or who is anyone to tell them when? I
That's
know,
it.
obviously,
Yeah,
it goes to a point when you're not worried for people's
yeah.
safety, but it's their life, isn't it? And
It
it's
is,
hard
and
to let something go. I find it
yeah,
hard to
and I
let it
think
go. And
he's quite a big character to Inagizora as well,
yeah,
um, and he earns a good few quid. So he's, it's the man's just making money for his family. That's his way of doing it. So, the people who say he shouldn't do it. Okay, that's your and our opinion on it, but it's his way of providing. So, he's going to do it.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, unless the British Boxing Board take his license off him,
Yeah,
he's going to carry on doing it. And I haven't got that. I've got a little eye on retirement, but I do think it'll be hard. When I think about it's something I've done since being at school. So to then be like, right, that's it. There's not going to be those phone calls that come and say, right, we've got you this fight now. Like now, I've had that fight in December. There's always that couple of weeks simmer down where everything just, people are still talking. Then it calms down, and then usually it phone rings and like, right, we're looking at this date, looking at this opponent, looking at this fight. So you're like, right, let's start building up to that, and then you have a little bit of a downtime, and then you build back up to another fight. And it's like that's been my life since school, and like what
yeah.
when I say right, that's it. There's no more of that, and that phone don't ring anymore. It'll take some adjusting, but I've got a good family and stable life, so I should adjust into it and be all right with it.
But it's not on the horizon yet because I want to talk about your
Yeah.
last fight. It's not, your last fight, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I think people, I personally think there was like literally you turn back the clock, and I know you're not old, but we'll be talking boxing terms, boxing age, and stuff like that. But it was like, did you? Did you know that was it's hard to kind of in hindsight obviously, but did you think you got that? Did you feel in a good place? Did you go in? Because in my opinion it was an absolutely outstanding performance. And what am I right in thinking that did you go in as the underdog?
I think it was very much thingy. I think I was the very slight favourite because of the
Right.
experience that I'd got. But yeah, there was some history there with that kid. He was a kid who was very hyped. He was picked up. He didn't turn pro with the big promoters, but he got picked up quite early in his career because he was knocking everybody out in like 1 and 2 rounds with his left hand. But I'd watched a lot of his fights because he started coming onto my tail and calling me out. He's like because I was up here, he was sort of here, all going like that. So he's wanting his big chance against me.
I
So he'd
get that.
called me
Yeah.
out at last, and I nearly fought him in 2020. I was, I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what were happening with my career, but I said I agreed to fight him, but my heart and my mind weren't in it, and I sort of said, nah, you know what, I can't be asked to fight him. Don't want to go over to Ireland in his backyard. I just can't be asked. Not because I was scared of him, I just couldn't be asked. And then COVID come anyway, so even if I wanted to fight him, COVID would have stopped it because it was supposed to be in April 2020, which was end of March. We were all locked down, so I couldn't have done it even if I wanted to. But then that fight never got remade when things got opened back up. Um, I got other fights and I went on this big run of success, and then he also went on a big run of success, but never quite at the level that I was at. So he kept calling me out, calling me out. And it was just before the Cambosos fight. I got offered Gary Cully, and then I also was in negotiations myself and my wife to fight Cambosos. And obviously, I went with Cambosos because it was more money. It was against the former undisputed champion
Yeah.
in America,
Why would you not?
headlining, my dreams. And my argument with Cully is like, even if I lost to George Cambosos, which I shouldn't have lost, but I lost. I says, losing to George Cambosos is still better than beating Gary Cully. I beat Gary Cully at that time when I was IBO world champion. People would have gone, all right, you've beat a hype, an up and coming kid who's not really done no. So that was my argument, and then he said, "Oh, I'm ducking him," and I was like, "How am I ducking you by fighting the former undisputed champion?" But anyway, that's what he said, and he kept calling me out, and then people were like, he'd flatten Maxi anyway, he'd flatten Maxi." Anyway, fast forward to that fight. He'd called me out for years, and I needed the fight then. I didn't know what fights were going to come my way. It was the biggest fight available to me, as well as it being in Monaco, with the fight contract became 2 fights this year with Matchroom. So I like, right, that secures another 2 big fights if I get the win. I'm confident in beating him. The bookies have got me a very slight favourite, but I know my experience. He's not gonna be on my level. I've been saying it for 4 years since we were nearly four, so I just need to prove it. So I always knew I had that performance in there, and I knew he wasn't on my level. I just had to convince people, and I thought best way of doing that is go out and do it. Which I did. I'd have loved to have knocked him out to really put him in his place, but the fight didn't go that way, but I'm quite satisfied with winning every round on all three judges' scorecards. He must feel a bit humiliated by he'd been calling me out for years. He had 10 rounds and he didn't get a sniff. Not one bit of success he had.
I
So
suspect he's gone a little bit quiet now then.
he has, yeah, and he hasn't really come out with any excuses.
Well,
I mean,
hats
I
off.
hope he doesn't. I hope he just takes it on chin and goes, you know what, I will beat by a better man. I'm hoping that's the sort of response. But yeah, I just had to go in there and put the man in his place, and that was my plan, and that's what came off.
Well, it worked, pal. And like I say, it was a shutout, and you looked absolutely fantastic doing it, pal. So yeah, I said to you, I watched that fight. And you told me before Christmas that it was coming up. I heard rumblings
Yeah,
and bits and bobs, but
yeah,
when you told me, I was like, right, I'm going to watch that, and I did. I'm glad I
yeah,
did. It was a cracking fight.
yeah.
Hats off, pal. Hats off. So I suppose that leads me on. Obviously, I mean, you've had lots of titles like Continental title. Are you still the kind of WBA Continental lightweight title now?
Yeah, so the titles I've had the Central Area title, which I thought was going to sort of be my ceiling level in boxing, but then I went on to win the WBC International. Don't mean a lot, but it's a nice green and gold shiny belt. And the one that I really wanted since turning pro was the Lonsdale belt, the British title. That was my dream, and I said at the time, if I never win another belt, I'm content with this belt. Winning the British title is what my goal was turning pro. So got that one, and then I got the opportunity to fight for the IBO world title. I won that, defended it a couple of times, so I've got that. And then I was denied my chance to fight for the IBF world title because of the Cambosos scenario, but then Gary Cully in the last fight, he was the WBA Continental, I think it is, and I beat him for that. I am still waiting for my belt because what happens is that's his belt. They present me in the ring with it. It was almost like you are the new champion. I had to give Gary that belt back, and then what they say is the WBA will make me a brand new one. It gets posted out. It should be. It's usually within 2 weeks, but it's been 4 weeks, I think, or 5 weeks since the fight, and I've still no sign of my new belt. So I need to chase that up so I get me
Someone's got it on the
get new
wall. It's
belt.
rocked up at the wrong house, and they've got it on their wall,
Pro-
gobbing off about how they
Probably,
won
yeah,
it.
yeah, probably.
No, fair play, pal. And like I say, so if if you'd have beat Cambosis, you'd have gone on and hopefully have fought Lomachenko? How? Because look, there's no secret. Lemachenko
Well,
was a
I
match.
I admire him. He's somebody who I look up to. I'll go on YouTube, watch his fights to say study his
Incredible boxer.
footwork, and I think I want to learn from him. And I'm not saying I would have beat him, but I would have trained and I'd have gone in there and give it my best. I feel like he's a generational great, is Lomachenko, and I'd have loved to have said I shared the ring with him for the world title. The highest level in boxing. I was there, but sadly that was taken from me. But I'd have loved that chance. But I've still got that fire in my belly, and I still believe I've got the ability to, fight the lads like him. With that WBA belt, I'm ranked number 5 with WBA, so hopefully I can work towards a shot at the full WBA world title. So we'll just see what the promoters and they've got planned for me. But yeah, as long as I make plenty of money and try and secure my kids, that's my main goal. If I don't fight for another belt, I can accept it. But as long as they pay me good money, where we can keep the roof over our heads and have a good life and enjoy time with kids.
No, absolutely, pal. Well, look, your career has been, I think, brilliant, and it's still going. And I hope you get that dream. I think you deserve it, and I hope the fights keep coming. And only you know when it's time to hang them up. But I suspect, your kind of mentality and your kind of fitness levels and everything else, that you've got a fair bit to give yet. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. Is there anything you can share as an exclusive? Is there anything that's been mentioned to you of possibilities, or who would you like to fight next?
There's not any name in particular, just my goal, I suppose. Again, I've not heard nothing yet. I need to chase up the promoters and and see what their plan is and what we're going to be looking at. But I've been no secret about I'd love to get on those Saudi Arabia cards, because that's where the money is, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
where it can
Me
change
too.
your life.
Me
So
too. And I'm
yeah.
45 with these chocolate belts. But if there's
So if
anyone
I
out there, give me
yeah.
Derek Chisora. I'm not bothered. I'll go for it.
If I get there, Chris, I'll drop your name and
Yeah,
I'll.
drop your name. And I suspect I'll be dodged though, mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Absolutely, mate. I hope that dream comes true for you, mate. And I'm sure it was. Keep pushing. It's been an absolute pleasure
yeah.
chatting to you.
Yes, thanks for having me, mate. Yeah,
No dramas at all, mate. And like I say, further down the line, I like to do maybe like a little bit of a catch-up podcast. I'd love to chat to you again. It's
yeah,
been fascinating. But for
absolutely,
now,
mate. Yeah.
pal, it's been my pleasure. You take care, and I wish you all the best
Thanks,
for the
mate.
future.
You too, mate.
See you later, pal.
Ciao, mate.